the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly board game podcast. I'm here to announce the first annual Spiel of Dreams. It's got a little bit of Iowa flair. As you can see here, this is a map of the state of Iowa, and it says I'm Iowa in like 50 different languages. Anyway, this is the first time I'm ever giving this award, which is going to be equivalent to my Game of the Year award, the Spiel of Dreams, in 2016. I know it's a little bit past the year 2016, but it's given me a chance to really play a lot of the games from 2016, and that way I don't have to, give my opinions while I've still got games I haven't had a chance to try. So at this point, I've gotten through pretty much all the games that I wanted to play from 2016 and can definitively say whether or not they were in the runnings for the Spiel of Dreams for this year. So I've got 3 nominees that didn't quite make it, and then 1 winner, and I'll go through those now. First up, PAX Renaissance. A little bit of history. I am generally not a Phil Eklund fan, but I've played PAX Porfiriana, and most of his other games are ones that I'm familiar with, but I've not played. And anyway, he tends to make simulation-style games. However, PAX Renaissance by Phil Eklund is a refinement of a system that he made in PAX Porfiriana, and it was made with kind of the design philosophies of Cole Wehrle, at least helping out a little bit in the game PAX Pamir. In PAX Renaissance, though, the entire system that was present in PAX Porfiriana, refined in PAX Pamir, just seems to be blown open. And I mean that it still retains that same sort of tight, taut economy, incredibly opaque, and very... the game can really change at the drop of a hat a lot, and you have to be very conscious of all the different possibilities out there. A card in this game usually has like 5 different abilities on even the most boring cards, and there's 4 different victory conditions you can go for. It has everything and more. And honestly, it would have won if I gave ratings on games based on how much I thought I was getting in terms of gameplay and the amount of the amount I had to pay, and also just the amount. You see how small this box is. It's ridiculous how much game there is in here. However, I'm very frequently looking for a game that's maybe a little bit more boring, a little bit less, less unpredictable. And maybe that's me. Maybe it's just that this game is really volatile, really opaque, and I love it for that. But it's also not my top game because that generally isn't what I like. But PAX Ren's awesome. You should check it out. Next up, Tramways by Albin Viard. So, I've played a lot of games by Albin Viard, and I will tell you that this game doesn't really feel like any of his other games. This is almost like a mixture of deck building, but found in games by Martin Wallace, like A Study in Emerald, or even more like A Few Acres of Snow, where your cards represent actions, and it's only deck building as one part of the game. In Tramways, you take the sort of deck building system from a Martin Wallace game and add it to Age of Steam, sort of, where you're going to be picking up passengers and then delivering them. But it's distinctly Albin Viard because his games seem to have this very common thread of being all about building cities, and there's 4 or 5 different buildings, and their functions don't really change much in all of his different games. So I've played Card City, I've played Town Center, I've played Small City, and now Tramways, an excellent game by Albin Viard. Quite an interesting one. There's a lot of game in here as well. The fact that you can set up the board in so many different ways means that, unlike Age of Steam, which is a game that I really love, this one has a lot coming for it right out of the box. So I'm excited to get a chance to play the new map expansion that comes with 2 maps. It makes it a little bit more like Age of Steam, a little bit more focused on that. But anyway, Tramways, one of my nominations for the Spiel of Dreams in this year, unfortunately did not quite make it. Actually, let me put these up here. We'll go ahead and put those up there like that. Next up, another nominee, Great Western Trail by Alexander Pfister. Great Western Trail is, in my opinion, probably the best just straight up Euro-style game in terms of the way that it melds together mechanics in sort of a seamless way. It gives you some really interesting and new choices to consider that I've never seen done before in a game. Here you've got deck building and probably the coolest rondel I've ever seen in any game ever. Because you are actually building buildings onto the rondel that are going to either tax other players or give you special actions. You're also building this deck of cows. You're working towards getting your ability to deliver higher and getting special abilities throughout the game. It is just, to me, it's a very simple core deck building mechanism with a herd of cows that you're really only trying to, you know, kind of collect a set that has one of each type. But the amount of mileage it's got out of the actual actions that you're taking and the decisions that you're making, to me, this is just an incredible game, and that's why it's one of my nominees here for the Spiel of Dreams 2017. And the ultimate winner of this year's Spiel of Dreams is, drumroll, oh, if I can lift it up here, it's A Feast for Odin by Uwe Rosenberg. This game has had like 2 or 3 grandchildren that were born even before it. I mean, by that I mean there was game patchwork that was just made based on the tile placement aspect of this game, just the sort of Tetris-like board filling in, and I'm blown away by it. First of all, A Feast for Odin has just some amazing historical Viking flair to it, but every single aspect of that is represented in real gameplay terms, and Uwe Rosenberg has had his first games, and one of my favorite games for many years, up until very recently actually, is Agricola, and it's a very tight worker placement game. And since then, he's come out with a lot of games, especially Caverna, but many of his other releases has all been kind of like loosey-goosey, feels like everybody can just do whatever they want, and one person gets the most points. By that I mean like Fields of Arla especially. Now, I've usually been more of a fan of the very tight, tough to get what you need Uwe Rosenberg design style, and A Feast for Odin doesn't fall into that. But this is the first of his games that I can truly say I love this game, even though it is a very sandboxy feeling game. Now, it's because I'm just so constantly engaged by all the different decisions I'm making when I'm placing tiles on my board. How do I get those tiles? Do I explore? You know, there's just so many different avenues you can go in the game. And I think that because of that, as well as the way that it just, I have no downtime in this game. I've got decisions to make in terms of what occupations I want to play. Oh, I have kind of created my own little variant that I play with my own group where instead of just drawing cards and being stuck with them, we do a draft at the beginning of the game, but you still have to get access to those cards. You're able to be a lot more purposeful in terms of what occupation cards you get. I think, though, mainly, A Feast for Odin just has those really cool occupation cards. Agricola was the first game of Uwe's to have just 300-something cards, and this one does almost as good with about 200 cards right here in this base box. And they're going to impact what you do in the game as well as give you just more of that Viking flair. Most of all, though, it is just the constant engagement and the decisions that I'm making that all of them seem to me to feel like there is usually one that I can think through and find the best choice, but it's just so hard to do when you have so many different interesting things and many ways that you can make multiple strategies work. A lot of times when I hear multiple paths to victory, it just means, the game's kind of a mess and it doesn't really matter what you do because everything has to be balanced. Here in A Feast for Odin, I do not necessarily think that's the case. I think that it is very, very well designed, very well thought out. Every action in the game has me on the edge of my seat, while likewise keeping me entertained while it's not my turn by puzzling out what I should be doing and how I'm going to place my tiles. A Feast for Odin, very deserving of this year's, hopefully first of many, Spiel of Dreams. I'm Joe Sallen. Thank you for watching. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Game Surplus. GameSurplus.com, bringing the world of board games to you. Just shoot out there a message to Carmen. He's a really great guy, very excellent customer service, and he'll be able to find whatever you're looking for in the board gaming world. So, kind of like the care you get from a local game store, but you can get him anywhere that you want because he's online. GameSurplus.com.